Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 21 of Wine with Wanda on Instagram Live. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So, today we are traveling to a very special place, and I'm going to bring our guest on in just a minute or two. We are going to Israel, a place that I've always wanted to visit. And what's really exciting about Israel when it comes to wine, it's kind of new world and old world. Old world because they have a winemaking history that spans 5,000 years, but new world because it's really in recent decades that we've seen these great innovations and investments in really creating elegant, expressive, beautiful wines. And more people need to be drinking Israeli wines. There's some wonderful things happening there. So when I wanted to have this conversation, I thought, who would be a really good person? My friend Martin Sinkoff. Martin, if you are in the wine industry, and I know many of you are and you're watching because of Martin, Martin has had such an impressive career, executive leadership roles with prestigious importers, and we'll get a little bit into his career. But Martin is a New Yorker who's recently relocated to Tel Aviv. And his company that he founded quite recently, Martin Sinkoff Associates, handles business development for the wine and spirits industry. So I thought this was a really important conversation to have in the light of COVID-19. We know it's presented a host of new challenges for the wine industry. That's one of the reasons we're all connecting this way and not toasting in person. So I'm going to bring Martin on in a moment. Because we're talking about Israeli wines and he's in Tel Aviv, I decided, of course, to have a beautiful bottle of wine from Israel. So this is Mount Herman Red, from Galilee, Golan Heights Winery, and it is the 2018 vintage, but I believe the 2019 is also available. It retails for about $15, and it's a Bordeaux blend, which is not uncommon in Israel. So it's Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and a bit of Cabernet Franc, and I think I see Martin there now, so we're gonna add him in. Okay, Martin, where are you? Okay, Martin joined. I'm waving at him. And Martin, if you're there, I am sending you a request to join. Okay. Something should pop up on your screen at any moment. All right, everyone, thanks for your patience. Always waiting for Instagram to do its thing. It says waiting for Martin to connecting.
Okay.
Ah. Martin, how are you?
Hi, Wanda. Hi, Wanda. Oh, that was a challenge.
You know, I love a little drama, so who better to bring me a little drama than Martin? You look great.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. So do you. So
Yes.
do you.
Well, I miss, wine tasting of yours. You were always so dapper and elegant and, guiding me through the wines of Burgundy and Bordeaux. And now you're in Tel Aviv.
Now I'm in Tel Aviv. True, true, true. But it's so great to connect with you. I love what you're doing, and it's just wonderful. And I'm so flattered that you invited me on the program.
Oh, my pleasure. How long have you been there now? It seems too long to me.
Well, it's been a year and about let's see, May, June, July, August, September. It's almost a year and a half.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow, it's really flown by.
Oh my gosh, it's been crazy, and of course, I can divide the time I've been here into two big periods now: pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Of course, of course.
So it's a crazy time.
And also because you have this new venture that you've started, Martin Sinkoff Associates, you're helping the wine industry with wine and business development, and this is a really challenging time for the industry.
Very.
So I'm sure people are reaching out to you like, what do we do?
Well, we help clients with my partner Roger Baumrich, who's a master of wine, as you noted on the site. We help clients navigate the U.S. market. That's really what we do, and we help clients also. We've taken on a variety of interesting projects. One of our most interesting projects, which is actually still ongoing, was with an Israeli importer who asked us to help source wines for his portfolio. And that was an exciting project because we had to look at, and he gave us very strict requirements for very, very high value wines. So we had to look, we really had to find the producers who could produce high quality wines at very low prices. And we did, and it was exciting actually to see what was available, because I'll just stay a little bit with that topic. One of the
Of course.
things that was interesting is a lot of the co-ops in Europe are producing very high quality wine at very, very good prices. They really are a source of tremendous value, and of course many of the négociants in France use the co-ops as a source of their wines and then bottle them under their own names. But you can go directly to the cooperative wineries and make arrangements with them. Many of them have their own brands. And it was very exciting to see how, since I worked with a lot of cooperative wineries years and years ago when I had my own company, it's exciting to see how they have improved. Just the whole wine world is so dynamic and evolves so quickly. And a lot of these co-ops are really making excellent wine at extraordinary prices.
That is true.
So that was one of our projects. But we've worked with Champagne producers, we've worked with Burgundian producers, as you mentioned, we've worked with Spanish producers, all interested in various. As Roger and I like to say, we are fine tailors, as it were. We don't sell anything off the rack. We measure our clients from tip to toe, and see and look at the different fabrics that they might want to wear, and then we design the suit after that. So there's no off the rack advice. It's all tailored to the needs of the client.
That's very fitting. And I know one question that I often get,
literally even very fitting.
Yes, but even before COVID, often when interviewing producers who weren't imported in the U.S. and wanted to be here, is there any quick advice you can get? Like if someone called you today and said, is it possible to get newly imported in the U.S. during this time of COVID? Is it feasible?
It's very challenging. But what we're telling clients is this. One, this situation is not going away. This is the world we're going to be living in for a while. So we all have to adapt. That's number one. Number two, the wine market is vibrant, dynamic, and growing. It's shifted in the way that consumers buy, both patterns, but it's created all kinds of new opportunity. And now is the time to look at those new opportunities. Because if you think you're going to wait it out, you're going to find yourself sidelined for a very, very long time. At some point you have to dive in the water, and that's what we're telling clients. And we're finding that, in fact, we're working right now with a producer who came to us early in the summer, and it was exactly that conversation. Was they were saying, let's look to the fall, let's look to 2021, let's not worry about now. Even if we can't travel now, what can we do as we move forward? And it was nice to have that conversation, because it's a conversation that's optimistic, that says we're all going to adapt, we're all going to deal with this in some way or other, and we're going to do business together, and we're going to drink wine, and we're going to enjoy wine, and we're going to produce great wines. Now, obviously, the pandemic or the epidemic has created real hardship in a lot of places, and will continue to create hardship. I think you probably saw the article in the New York Times a little while ago by Adam Nossiter about Alsace.
Yes.
It's
heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, and in Champagne too, they're having to distill a lot of grapes. So there's real hardship there. This is not an easy time for any of us, really. If you look at the restaurant business, it's a terribly difficult time. And even for retailers are having to adapt to new shipping methods, to new selling methods, new competitive opportunities are arising, but new competitive threats are arising as well. So no business is immune from this situation, and we all need to adapt, basically.
That's true. We have to pivot and adapt. Well, I want to step back a little because I know you are a Francophile, and we knew each other for several years before we knew we kind of had something in common from our teenage years.
Absolutely, and I think our friend Susan McLean is online.
I believe she's watching.
And it was she who told me that we shared our high school experience together, though in two different places, right?
You were in
places.
Spain. Mm-hmm.
And your class of Spain of what? What year were you?
Well, a woman who will tell her age will tell anything.
I'm sorry.
My grandmother said.
I take it back.
But yes, I participated in the School Year Abroad SYA program when they were in Barcelona. So that's a hint of how long ago it was, because now they're not in Barcelona. And you were in Rennes, France, which was the founding city for the program.
Right.
When it was School Boys Abroad when it started.
You're exactly right. Though my year was School Year Abroad. We were co-ed. We had men, girls and boys. But it was such a wonderful year. I still have among my dearest friends are from that year in Rennes. I absolutely loved it, and we had a you didn't go. We had a 50th School Year Abroad reunion in Rennes.
Oh, nice.
And now I think it was 50 years for the school. It wasn't 50 years of Rennes.
Okay.
So I could be wrong about that. I don't know. Susan will correct us, but it was a great event, and a lot of my classmates came.
That's wonderful.
So we had a little mini reunion.
So I can't help but wonder if some of your passion for wine maybe was ignited there, because I know for me in Spain at 16, sitting around the table with my host family was really when I was beginning to get introduced to little sips of vino at dinner. So what about you?
Right. The answer is yes and no.
Okay.
But there is no doubt that my love of France, my love of French, my love of language and languages, and my love of food, basically. All of those were the basis. And when I started to think about what I wanted to do with my life in college, I kind of threw all of this up in the air, and I said, I had a conversation with myself. Mm-hmm. And I said, self, what do you want to do? And I said, well, self, you like writing, you like reading, you like food, you like foreign languages. What can you do? And I for some reason, things come to us in life when we need them in a certain way. And I came across I came across a book. Well, there's a little more of a backstory, but a wonderful book that's way, way, way out of print, called The International Album of Wine.
Oh, okay.
By a man named Stephen Schneider, who became a friend, a mentor, a teacher. And Stephen had started a small négociant business in Bordeaux. And when I read the book, I said, that's it. I want to go into the wine trade, because this way, if I'm in the wine trade in France, I'm involved in the commercial activity of France. Mm-hmm. I'm not just teaching French or studying French. I'm actually in France. I'm not outside looking in. I'm inside the system. And I wrote to him, and he wrote back. And I will never forget the letter I received. It was on that old airmail paper, onion skin paper. Mm-hmm. And it was typed, because this was before computers or email or text or Instagram or any of it. And the other thing that struck me by it was it came in this letter, and he addressed me, and here I am, all of 20-something years old. He addressed me as Dear Mr. Sinkoff. And I think it was the first time in my life anyone had called me Mr. Sinkoff. But he basically said, listen, I no longer have the business that I had written about, that his business had closed, but if you ever come to Bordeaux, please look me up. Mm-hmm. And while then I knew I was on a path, and it was through another wine writer who's now unfortunately deceased, Alexis Lachine, who wrote for New York Magazine and whom I met through other contacts. That's a little other story, which I can tell you if we have time or you're interested. But Alexis Lachine, who was a charming, lovely, kind, intelligent man, a lovely and a very good wine writer. He wrote for New York Magazine, and I think he wrote for other publications as well. He invited me to lunch. Again, these are things you never forget. I remember exactly what we had. We had cold roasted chicken and a muscadet.
Oh, okay.
And his apartment was on 79th and 2nd. And he said, listen, I may have something for you. And he phoned Alexis Lachine, who lived on Fifth Avenue, not far away. And he said, listen, I think I may have a young man here who would fit the bill for you. I guess they had spoken. He had actually worked for Alexis before. Mm-hmm. And I went to see Alexis Lachine, and he needed someone who was fluent in French, who had a background in publishing, because I finished, after I went to Brown, I finished a publishing course at Radcliffe.
Oh, okay.
Who was interested in the wine business. And Alexis hired me, and I moved to Bordeaux in May of 1979.
Wow.
And spent a year with Alexis, helping him with his books and helping him with anything he needed help with. He was an amazing, interesting, unbelievably charismatic man.
Yeah, for people who don't know him, because we have some folks who are new to the wine world who don't know Alexis Lachine, maybe give a little tidbit about his very important role in wine.
Well, Alexis came from a very interesting family with a background that's not 100% known, but he came from a Russian family, but became an American, and he had a powerful personality, and he made his mark actually he bought wine for General Eisenhower's staff in World War II. And then he decided because he traveled around France, he decided to start importing wine to the United States. Mm-hmm. And set up his own business, which was very successful. And he was one of the first he really had a lot of firsts. He encouraged Burgundian producers to bottle their wines at their estate. He also was very controversial in Bordeaux because he wanted to sell direct from his chateau, which was a real no-no. It's still a no-no in a certain way, but it was certainly a no-no in the 50s and the 60s. And he put signs up in Bordeaux. He was considered a little bit vulgar in a lot of ways by the Bordelais. But he had many friends, many supporters, and his business was very successful. And then he sold his business to the big brewer in England, Bass Charrington. And I'm not sure what the business, and now this is years ago, when I worked for him, the business had already been sold to Bass Charrington. But Alexis, then he had many lives. And when I worked for him, he was consulting to Somerset Wine Company, which then became Shefflin Somerset. Mm-hmm. And the head of Somerset Wine Company was none other than Bill Deutsch, who, of course, has had a stellar, unbelievable career.
Absolutely.
One of the greatest successes in the American wine trade. And so I met Bill at the time, and Alexis at the time he was a precursor. He took Somerset Wine Company to the Languedoc. And this was before anyone thought about the Languedoc. And he again, we were talking about cooperative wineries. He developed a relationship with two wineries, one in the Roussillon and one in the Languedoc. The Vigneron Catalan was the one, and the other one was the Vigneron du Val d'Orbieu. And he made a mistake, but it's so understandable. Instead of bringing in varietal wines, which really hadn't arrived in the American market at that time, quite in the way that, of course, we know them now, he decided to bring in the appellations of the Languedoc, like Côte du Roussillon and Corbière. And these were unknown, and they were hard to sell, and with the marketing dollars that were being spent, they were also $1 too high, even though I think they were $4.99.
Oh my goodness!
But at that time, you could find wines for $3.99, so that dollar made a difference.
Made a difference.
Yeah, and the project was not that successful, but I fell in love with the Long Duck, and I made great contacts there, and that was the beginning of my. A long story short, when Martin Sinkoff Wines was founded, it was founded in a partnership with Val d'Orbieu Wines, with the same Val d'Orbieu that I had met when I worked for Alexis. So what
So
comes around
wonderful.
goes around, and everything is connected in some way.
Our friend
Uh,
Francine just left a comment. You need to write a memoir, Martin. You need to share these wine stories. You've got all the juicy
it's great
details
to
on
have friends
everyone.
like Francine. It's great.
So many juicy stories. But let's talk about you. And you are in Israel, and there's a lot of exciting things happening
Oh
with
my gosh,
wines there.
it is so dynamic, and Israeli producers are just starting to harvest right now.
Okay.
But it is so exciting, so dynamic. The wine trade here is just bubbling, and evolving so fast. And the quality bar is moving higher and higher and higher each year. Since I've been watching the situation closely, which is about 3 years, every year there are improvements in quality.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. It really is. And the new developments in Israel, just to kind of paint it with a broad brush, are starting to develop appellations, really distinct growing regions that will have their own personality, and wineries and that are married to those appellations, because many wineries, especially the larger ones, source grapes from different regions. A little bit like a Californian winery that might get grapes from different parts of California and call it California appellation to make a particular wine. Well, Israeli wineries at the top of the quality pyramid are saying, we want to be of our region. We want to defend our region. And there are no real Israeli wine laws as there are in France with the INAO, or even in California or United States with the ADA. So there are known specific places, but there's not yet a legal structure to define the appellations yet in full. But that's happening.
Oh, that's exciting.
That's happening.
Well, I know
Yeah,
you have
very
some
exciting.
wines with you, right, that you wanted to show us today?
I do, and let's see. It comes out backwards, but I actually I'm drinking 2 wines because with you, one is not enough.
Ah,
But I
sorry.
have four wines to show,
Okay.
and they're 4 wines. And the reason that I picked these 4, I was trying to think. I mean, there's so many friends I have, and I feel bad that I'm not showing other wines.
I
But
know it's
the
tough.
reason it's terrible. But these 4 wines are really pioneer wineries because they formed a group called the Judean Hills Quartet.
Oh.
And they are all estate grown wines from the area, the limestone ring that rings Jerusalem to the west. It is an extraordinary terroir. If you go there, and I'm sorry we can't share screens, and I could show you, it looks exactly like Provence.
Wow.
It's extraordinarily beautiful, and when you cut into the land, there are deep limestone and fossil terraces. So the soil conditions are excellent. It's cool at night because it's high elevation, warm in the day, and excellent wine growing terroir. So there are 4 wineries that created this association, and they're all absolutely terrific. They do different things. So the first winery, one of them that I'm drinking, let me see how to do this. Can you see that?
Yeah, just lift it up a little.
Yeah.
All right. Yes,
Is that
that's good. Mm-hmm.
So this is a 2019 rosé from Domendu Castell.
Okay.
And Castell is from it was named for an old, very old fortress that was there and so it was named for that fortress. It's owned by the Ben Zaken family. They actually came from Egypt, French speaking, and they produce extraordinary wines that have been written up in many places. And this rosé, like the wine you're drinking, is actually a Bordeaux blend rosé.
Oh,
But
okay.
you can see the color. It's
Beautiful.
perfectly clear.
It is.
The wine is absolutely delicious. It's got a tiny bit of earthiness, a little bit of tannin. It's a rosé for food, for sure. I mean, I would not mind sipping it by the pool or in hot weather or at any time, really. But it's got substance and character as well as being very, very refreshing. So it's a vinous rosé, and really, really, really good. And it's available in the United States.
It is
All
available.
of the wines,
All are available.
All are available.
Great. Thank
now,
you for that.
The next wine that I also opened and I'm drinking is a very interesting wine. Can you see that?
Yes.
Sparrow Riesling.
Riesling.
And
okay.
this winery makes only white wine. It's a true boutique winery, state of the art winemaking, with a brilliant winemaker named Doron Ravhon and his wife, who is extraordinary, Sima Ravhon, who runs the operations and does the marketing. They make only white wine, and the reason I picked the Riesling is Riesling is not the kind of grape you would think would grow in a Mediterranean climate, but Doron makes this Riesling. If we could be together rather than separated by 5,000 miles and all of this stuff that's going on, if we could be here to taste it, if I served this to you blind, you would never guess it. You would definitely place it in Europe. It's got that wonderful slightly petroleum nose and vibrant, beautiful acidity. It could definitely find itself. When I first tasted this wine, I said to Doron, I said, this wine would not be out of place in a blind tasting with Alsace dry Riesling.
Okay.
It's really, really good.
I'm going to look for that one. It sounds really interesting.
And it is imported in the United States. So it's very limited in quantity, but it's really an interesting wine to look for. And what's so interesting, one of the stories that Doron told me is that when he started, he decided only to make white wine. And all of his colleagues said, oh, you're crazy. People drink more red wine here. How can you make only white wine? And of course, his white wines are, or his and Sima's white wines are on the best wine lists in Israel. And soon, depending on what happens in the United States, we'll be on some of the top wine lists in New York for sure. So,
yes, I've forgotten what a restaurant looks like and how it functions.
Right.
One of these days.
Right. No,
Absolutely.
for sure.
So what's next? What's next for us?
So those are the two wines I'm drinking. But what I want to show you now, the other two, there were 4 wines in the quartet, a quartet. Mm-hmm. And this is a wine from the Flam family. It's called Flam Classico. This is a red. Very good value. All of these wines are good value. Probably the Sparrow Riesling is the most expensive. The Castell Rosé is probably, I'm going to say, about $25, something like that. The Flam Classico, I think I'm going to go out on a limb. I think is probably under $20. It's a blend, a red blend, and the winemaker, the family, the Flam family, is a celebrated family in Israeli winemaking. There are 2 brothers who are running, and I think their sister who run the winery now. But the 2 brothers whom I know, Gilad is in charge of their import company and their marketing, and Golan is in charge of the winemaking. And Golan spent many, many years working in Italy, which is why the wine is called Classico. But they are an exceptional family, and in fact, last year, they're importers for the wines of the Caz family in Bordeaux, who own Chateau Lange-Bage. And they had a tasting of their top wine, the Noble. It's called Noble, which is their top level wine. Various vintages of Noble with various vintages of Chateau Lange-Bage. And it was an exceptional tasting that basically goes to your first point, which is that Israeli wines now are able to hold their head and shoulders right at the level of wine producers from regions, even including Bordeaux or the Napa Valley or other regions that are well regarded for the quality of their wines. So that's Flamme Classico. And the last wine that I have here is, and let's see, it's called Judean Hills.
I think
But
I've
let me
had
see
that
if you
before. Yeah.
Yeah, this wine is available in New York. In fact, I can tell you the importers of each of these. Can you? Anyway, it's hard to read the label. It's at the bottom. It's
Okay.
at the bottom somewhere. It says, can you see that? Sora? Let me see.
And it's backwards for me, so I can't.
Oh, it's backwards.
Yeah.
This winery is called Sora Vineyards, Tzora. And among its many distinctions, the manager of this estate, and it's all estate bottled, is Israel's first MW. His name is Aaron
Peak. Yes, I've met him, I believe, years ago.
He's a charming young man and a brilliant young man, and his wines are, they make very few wines, but the wines are excellent. This is their entry level wine. They're kind of wine by the glass wine. It's absolutely delicious. He is very, Aaron, I think I can say, is pretty much a Bordeaux lover, as am I. Okay. So the wine has a wonderful, rounded, rich tannin to it. It's very delicious. It's got a wonderful texture. What distinguishes the wine of Sora, all of their wines, the whites and the red, is this almost creamy texture, which is the sign of really excellent, precise winemaking.
Wonderful.
And again, if anyone online and wants to look up, if you tap into Google Judean Hills Quartet, they have a beautiful website, and you can see pictures of the quality of the land and the quality of the terroir and the overall aspect of the appellation. It's really very, very beautiful.
That's exciting.
So yeah. So
I'm going to show, just for people just tuning in, this is what I'm drinking here.
Excellent choice.
And you recommended this one. You said you're familiar with this bottle.
I did. I'm a big fan.
But what I like about it is definitely Bordeaux style, but I've noticed definitely with the Israeli reds, you get that Mediterranean feel. There's always kind of an herbal quality that's very Mediterranean to me that comes out in a lot of the red wines in Israel that I love.
Absolutely. In fact, as I was preparing to talk to you, and getting a little bit nervous, by the way, I went to look up each of the wines, and actually, and this speaks exactly to your point, I usually, this may sound odd coming from someone who's been in the wine trade, I don't pay that much attention to varietals. I pay attention to wines. To me, the wine has to express something. It's not the grape that expresses something. The grape adds a voice, but it's the orchestra that matters. It's the sound it's the combined music that comes from a wine, not one instrument. Now there are wines that are just one instrument wines, but the most interesting wines have dimension. So the point is, I've drunk many bottles of Mount Herman Red, and I buy it often. It's a wine that you can find very easily in Israel. And in the United States, I bought it all the time because it's a very good value kosher wine for holidays. And I was very much a part of my synagogue in New York, and we had events and so on. And I would always try and find the Mount Herman Red because it's a good value and excellent wine. But the point of my story is, I always assumed, I didn't look it up, I always assumed it was a Mediterranean blend. And I often said to people, you could put the Mount Herman Red in a tasting with various Côte du Rhône, and it would hold its own.
Absolutely.
And in preparing for your program, I looked it up, and I said, my gosh, it's a Bordeaux blend. But it speaks to your point that there's a Mediterranean character to it that comes through, And that's translated in a different way by these Bordeaux varieties.
Exactly. I'm so glad you mentioned kosher, because I think that also creates some confusion for some consumers. Kosher is not an indicator of the quality of the wine. So I think people say, oh, if I'm buying wine from Israel, it's a kosher wine and it should just be in a section labeled kosher. So do you want to
No,
expand a little? I think there's still some confusion, right?
absolutely. Kosher, you should think of kosher, the kosher designation, the way you think of sustainable, biodynamic, organic, vegan. In other words, it's a plus. But being a wine made as a kosher wine, the quality is not impacted in any way, shape, or form. It's made in exactly the same way.
Exactly.
From a spiritual point of view, it's very interesting what makes a wine kosher, not just from the production aspect. And let me see if I can explain this clearly and without going on too long. Fruit, grapes, are product of nature, but wine is a product of man and nature. Mm-hmm. And in Judaism, anything that is a collaboration between man and nature is necessarily considered something that has an aspect of sanctity, an aspect of holiness. And the kosher designation recognizes that in some way. So it has to do, a wine becomes, at a winery, the fruit can be handled in any way by anyone, but the winemaking has to be attended to in a different way. So that transformative process is recognized and in a certain way acknowledged. And that's in an overall, and someone might dispute me, that's how wines become kosher.
Great.
But the winemaking itself is not different in any way. The tanks, the pumps, or the gravity feeds, and the pressing, and the stemmer crushers, are all the same.
Exactly. And it's true. I think people think, oh, kosher wine is kind of this one note generic thing. And it's not. Like you said, it's an extra, but the wine itself can reach a level that's superb.
Well, all of the wines that I pointed out, that I picked out today, are kosher except the Sphera. They chose the Sphera Riesling. The Doran and Sima chose not to be kosher, not to create kosher wines. Now they're small. As they grow, they may find that it's important for them to be mm-hmm. kosher, because in a way, by not being kosher, they've excluded a market. But on the other hand, one of the big challenges that Israeli wineries have, and almost all Israeli wineries with which I've spoken have asked me this question, is they feel that the kosher designation locks them into a set in the stores that is not really who they are. They want to be in an Israeli wine set. They don't want to be in a kosher wine set. And this is a big challenge right now, but it's being worked on. Wines of Israel is working on mm-hmm. it. Individual wineries are working on it. And it's interesting that of the 4 wineries that I showed you, even though they're all in the same association together to help promote their region and to promote their wines, 2 of the wines, Flam and Castell, are imported in the United States by Royal Wine Company, which is the largest kosher wine importer and producer. But Sora is imported by Skurnik Wines.
Okay.
And Sphera is imported by Dreyfus Ashby. And the reason that those wineries chose those importers in part is that they wanted to be tasted by, shown by, purchased by, and by the non-kosher wine circuit. They don't want to be only in the mm-hmm. kosher wine restaurants or kosher wine store sets. So again, as the wine production is evolving, so too is wine distribution evolving for Israeli wine.
Great. Well, I always like to end with this question, and we may have answered it a little, but maybe there's something else. I always like to give my guests a chance to not just wine with Wanda, but wine, to vent a little, get something off their chest. So,
Yes, yes, yes.
so is there a pet peeve, a misconception? I know we've tackled kosher, but is there any other misconception about wine in general, or Israeli wines, or Burgundian wines? Anything that you want to address today?
It's a great question. I should have prepared for that one. Uh, I got a lot of pet peeves.
That's always
um,
everyone's response. You just want
uh,
one?
right.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, how much time do we have? Let me think if there's something I can say that's politically correct but useful, rather than just whining about something.
Yeah.
Um, I think the most important thing about wine is to enjoy it and to drink it. And I see. I'll tell you a little story. I see all of all of these wine scores and tastings of wines that none of us, let's take. I see. Let's taste Chateau Latour going back to 1961. Well, who? I mean, it's interesting intellectually, but who is ever going to be able to do that?
Exactly.
Except the single journalist who had the pleasure, or a great collector who has purchased these vintages. I am a big fan, and all of the wines that I selected are wines that are accessible on an everyday basis. Wine is for every day.
Yep.
Wine is for lunch, for dinner, maybe not for breakfast, although
occasionally.
Maybe sometimes. And I think that sometimes what I miss in wine journalism to some degree is the story. The score has replaced the story, and instead of fine writing about wine, we have these massive tastings of wines with scores. Okay, they're useful, they're interesting to look at, and they help sell wines. I can't argue with that. But if you go back to wine writing and food writing before scoring, there were wonderful writers. I'm thinking all off the top of my head, but MFK Fisher and AJ Liebling, who wrote, or Richard Olney, who wrote marvelous stories about wine and about people, and exactly as what you were saying before. This is culture. Wine is culture. Wine expresses a national identity and a regional identity. And those are the things that I think make wine ultimately very, very interesting. Not whether it's better or best or blockbuster, or those are ultimately passing issues. A human story is remembered forever.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, have to say, I've seen a lot of comments today. Don't worry, everyone. I'm going to be posting the wines that Martin mentioned. I'll share those on my website so you can see the wines from the Judean Hills Quartet. Martin, what's your website? Do you want to give that out so people can find you online?
Sure. It's easy. It's www.sinkoff.com.
Doesn't get easier than that. Well, thank you so much.
Couldn't be easier. Wanda, I miss you.
I miss you too.
I love your program, and when travel restrictions disappear, I will come see you in New York, and I want you to come visit me
I
here.
would love to. Well, L'chaim. Right?
L'chaim. Absolutely.
So good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin. Bye-bye.
Okay. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.